Good day. My name is Geyer and I am a lecturer at the University of Johannesburg. I lecture in the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture in the Interior Design Department. This paper is co-authored with my colleague and lecturer, Prinsloo. We present to you from the city of Johannesburg in South Africa. Our research and upcoming paper focuses on how the knowledge and skills that support the Interior Design 3 module learning outcomes in our degree program were translated from the physical to the online studio. We look at how lesser technologies, not ordinarily associated with design teaching, were explored to preserve the dynamic interaction and contact with materiality in an online studio environment in an educational context. Alfred Whitehead famously said, "The art of progress is to preserve order amid change and to preserve change amid order." Our paper endeavors to explore ways in which our teaching styles and strategies in the Interior Design 3 module attempt to echo this sentiment in reaction to the jump from the physical to online interior design studio during a time of rapid change. The growing demands from industries to equip students with qualifications that prepare them for the rapid changes to social, environmental, and economic environments place immense pressure on educators. Amidst the global changes caused by artificial intelligence and machine learning, robotics, biotechnology, and genomics, tertiary institutions faced further challenges in 2020 caused by the jump to the online studio during the COVID-19 nationwide lockdown. Here you see the University of Johannesburg's Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture, more fondly known as the FADA building, which offers a well-established and recognized interior design program. At the University of Johannesburg, the nationwide lockdown occurred when skills-based and peer-to-peer learning was critical in the Interior Design 3 module. In March 2020, the COVID-19 global pandemic forced institutions to move teaching and learning from the physical lecture and studio to a fully integrated online platform. The academics in the Department of Interior Design quickly set about upskilling themselves in the transition week between studio to online. We had to very quickly identify suitable platforms and technologies that would allow us to translate some of our education strategies and teaching methods into the online studio. South Africa was put into a level 5 lockdown from late March. The Interior Design degree program for all year levels and all modules was moved completely onto online teaching platforms. Lecturers quickly learned that online learning presented a new set of challenges specifically for our practical modules. Interior Design 3 was one of these modules. We were fortunate in that our third-year students were allowed to return to campus for practical modules when our country's restrictions were eased and we were moved to level 3 in July last year. This move back into the design studio eased the online challenges being experienced by both lecturers and students. However, in the midst of not knowing whether we would return to campus at all in 2020, Elsa and myself explored alternative methods and education strategies in the hope of translating the knowledge sets and skills that support the Interior Design 3 module learning outcomes from the physical to the online studio. The purpose of the Interior Design 3 major module is to develop and refine complex interior design solutions by analyzing and evaluating a range of specified problems pertaining to design projects and presenting creative solutions that display advanced conceptual thinking and research skills in an integrated manner. It is a year module that is assessed through continuous assessment throughout the year. Interior design is largely a visual art where drawings, graphics, models, and presentation drawings are used extensively to clearly communicate information to the client. fellow designers and contractors. In order to analyze a design problem, students need to understand basic principles like scale, proportion, balance, as well as elements of design like space, form, line, texture, pattern, light, and color. Students have been introduced to these principles and design elements in their first year and have applied these to their design solutions in second year. They are expected to use this gained knowledge to present conceivable solutions to a wide range of three-dimensional interior design problems. The teaching and learning methods in this module comprise practical studio time. This is facilitated in our third-year computer studio each week. Project briefs are presented and discussed on a weekly basis by the facilitators, myself and Ilse, to enable students to present a proposed design solution within a specified time period. Students are required to use all the skills and knowledge obtained in the first 2 years of study to complete each project. Furthermore, students engage in a range of activities to support their learning, such as site visits, visits from industry members and alumni, and being briefed by and presenting their design solutions to prospective clients. As discussed, the national lockdown and jump to online learning occurred when this skills-based and peer-to-peer learning was critical in the Interior Design 3 module. Studio-based learning enables our third-year students to function in a society with recognized cultural attitudes and values. Students are equipped to develop and promote a conscious attitude that will enable them to identify and solve problems by using critical and creative thinking skills, to collect, analyze, and organize and critically evaluate relevant information to address complex design challenges, to integrate knowledge from different sources, to evaluate and apply different types of knowledge to reach advanced design solutions, to understand the world as a set of related systems by recognizing that problem-solving contexts do not exist in isolation, to manage processes in a manner that shows an understanding that problem-solving does not occur in isolation, to make ethical decisions, especially with regard to social and environmental matters, to communicate effectively using written, verbal, and visual language skills in presenting interior design solutions, to demonstrate the ability to perform a self-evaluation and take responsibility for work produced. These knowledge sets and skills that support the Interior Design 3 module learning outcomes cannot therefore easily be translated from the physical to the online studio. To exacerbate the challenges of online learning in this module, Ilse and I found ourselves grappling with the difficulty of many students at the institution not having access to computers and a reliable internet connection. It thus became a necessity to explore lesser technologies not ordinarily associated with design teaching in order to preserve the dynamic interaction and contact with materiality in an online studio environment. Our aim is therefore to contribute to the interior design discourse by describing how teaching strategies were innovatively adapted using lesser technologies in the online design studio to transfer the knowledge and skills required to meet the Interior Design 3 module learning outcomes. Through critical reflection, academics in the Interior Design 3 module identified two themes that emerged as key components in both the physical and online design studio. Dynamic interaction has been studied as a multidimensional construct consisting of three subtypes: behavioral, cognitive, and emotional. Studies have been conducted to examine the relationship between lecturer-student interaction and academic outcomes, such as student achievement and learning. Students who shared a good interaction with their lecturer reported higher levels of behavioral, cognitive, and emotional engagement compared to those who shared poor interactions with their lecturers. These findings highlight the significance of the dynamic interaction between lecturers and students in enhancing learning outcomes in students. Materiality refers to the interaction with environments and the connection with matter. It relates strongly to dynamic interaction in that students connect with learning spaces in a physical or online environment. It is the environmental, biological, social, and physiological influences that define each student's unique reality in time. It also relates to the materiality of learning, where students explore the intended and unintended result of making meaning through the use of tangible material qualities with developed design solutions. A significant component of the Interior Design 3 studio is the verbal interaction between the student and the lecturer. The verbal interaction has been documented as a key role player in enhancing the development of a phenomena labeled the design life space. Research suggests that each design project exists and develops in response to the construction and the dimensions of the individual and shared design life space. Lecturer and student interaction in a design studio setting has always been the basis of design education. Findings in studies have presented the lecturer-student interaction in a design studio setting as the cornerstone of design education. The design studio setting is a relevant model for design education. The studio is a space where several students work on their projects while being taught by a lecturer. This setting is intended to simulate a professional studio in a controlled educational environment. Often referred to as the learning by doing paradigm, this educational setting stems from the tradition of the guilds in medieval Europe, where the master-apprentice model was used to teach craftsmen. This educational environment is typical but not exclusive of design disciplines. In these disciplines, the design studio is the center of the educational experience. All the relevant subdisciplines, for instance ergonomics, computer-assisted design, drawing, or design history, are typically taught in conventional lectures, whereas learning how to design is reserved for the studio. Thus, the fundamental aspect of the design studio setting is the lecturer and student interaction. There are two important difficulties that emerge from this educational setting. It is not uncommon that design studio lecturers are also, or have been, practitioners who do not have specific pedagogical training. Yet, it would be challenging to provide design lecturers with pedagogical frameworks that could be applicable to design education. Design occupies an ambiguous status. It is not art and it is not science. It is obviously a creative endeavor, but artistic teaching models do not fully apply to design, since design is also supposed to be purposeful, to have a function, or to fulfill a human need. Furthermore, knowledge about how to design remains mostly tacit knowledge, since designers find it difficult to make explicit what they know. The situation renders the intricate dialogue that is expressed either verbally or non-verbally between lecturer and student in the design studio rather obscure. Scon, from 1985, highlighted this situation and called this difficulty the paradox and predicament of learning to design. Initially, the student does not and cannot understand what design means. He finds the artistry of thinking and doing, like an interior designer, to be elusive, obscure, alien, and mysterious. Thus, lecturer and student interaction remains unclear and difficult to describe. While the general framework of design education appears to be compatible with constructivist learning theory, general learning theory models can only describe the educational setting in its most generic aspects, whereas the intricacies of learning how to design remain implicit. The language of designing is a language of doing architecture. Again by Scon in 1985. In this quote, Scon addresses a few aspects that are paramount for design education. Firstly, that there is a particular language of design that a student must learn, which is tacitly alluded to by the lecturer. And secondly, that the role of the lecturer is twofold. On the one hand, he acts as an expert practitioner, displaying his expertise as an example for the student to follow. On the other hand, the lecturer at times interrupts his performance, as it were, to highlight and directly address the process of designing. Thus far, most studies that delved into the design studio setting have been focused on the design process. This comes as no surprise since the design process has been a central research field within design research as a whole. The dynamic interaction in the physical studio is thus mediated in a relatively instinctive manner. The immediate contact that the studio provides gives students the opportunity to connect with lecturers during a 5-hour studio session and engage in meaningful teaching-learning dialogues. Casual conversations in the passages of the department further enable students to further draw on feedback, guidance, and instruction from lecturers. The jump to the virtual online studio immediately presented challenges. Studio time was replaced by strictly structured times and modes that was hampered by access to technology and bad internet connectivity. Where students previously had opportunities to connect with lecturers during a 5-hour studio session and casual passageway chats, online teaching was limited to short, focused interaction. Questions such as whether the relationship of lecturer to students was going to be limited to one-to-many or allow many-to-many communication platforms were raised. How were communications and dynamic interactions going to be facilitated by the technology? Research indicates there are pedagogical issues raised by the technology in creating a virtual online studio. The success of a virtual design studio does not rely only upon effective technological support. Process is as much a contributing factor to success as is technology. Thus, a virtual studio must assist the students in learning about processes which support a successful design exchange over communication networks. The techniques employed must also accommodate the capacities or inadequacies of the technology at hand. In this context, the online studio presented an opportunity for extending openness from an operational design studio behavior to a holistic attitude towards design. The online studio presented opportunities for expanding studio activities, while a network-structured communication setting sought to promote student connectivity. Communication could be expanded to stakeholders and members of the industry related to the project, as well as people from other domains, in order to broaden the knowledge base of the studio. Online features and additional face-to-face practices were used in a complementary mode because learning was not limited to the adoption of online modalities, but also involved the reconsideration of face-to-face meetings and the redesign of the physical studio. Students were able to direct their learning by choosing the degree of their involvement in the various features offered in this layout. The advent of the virtual design studios appears to raise promising opportunities for reconsidering the way we teach design. It changes the relationship between lecturer and student and the rest of the world. In this way, it opens up numerous opportunities. We have an opportunity to reconsider the teaching methods we employ and adapt them to these opportunities rather than forcing the new process into our recently adopted conceptions about appropriate ways to teach in a design studio. The virtual online studio presents a model where learners are not just receivers but actively construct knowledge through dynamic interactions. In the module Interior Design 3, learning focuses on activities organized around the systematic and deliberate pursuit of creating and developing something new. It can be new concepts that students communicate in text through visual means or a design artifact. Thereby, a notion of practice as an enactment of and a medium for learning blends learning together with action. In other words, learning is linked with the activities in a learning in practice way. Materiality in the learning environment and interactions with materials are inexpressible in the online studio. Students draw on visual and linguistic resources to make meaning. They understand that materiality represents ideas, and they recognize that materiality motivates meaning. These students appreciate that ideas and meanings are interconnected. When students engage in complex decisions, they do so by selecting from a range of meaning-making systems. In text and with visual resources, through various accessible resources and the combined use of these resources. Visual representation allows students to engage with each element's function and qualities in a more considered, be it theoretical way, and decides how to communicate an idea. Visual modes demand consideration of the relationship between different elements such as line, shape, form, texture, and color. Spatial dimensions, like 2D to 3D representations, allow opportunities to present relationships between different components through layering, which is the representation of depth and texture. Materiality is an element that is often discussed in the background of educational theories and practices. It is described as the material part of learning, particularly how learning is linked to engagement with environments and matter. However, traditional definitions of learning can detract from our ability to understand how learning occurs in other modalities. Considering the rapid move to online teaching, it will be reasonable to review our understanding of the significance of embodied cognition in learning and the effect of teaching and learning activities on our human embodiment. The materiality of the learning environment has been much debated over the last decade. According to the Frankfurt School's critical approach, things influence learning processes because it gives a surplus of sense-making that lies beyond language. Tilly states that materiality is an integral dimension of culture and signifies psychological and social realities where it functions as a way to reproduce realities. Researchers have debated the notion of the digital replacement of education environments and materials. They have provided evidence of the potential differences for learners between reading, writing, and touching on paper, which is the physical, versus on a computer screen, the digital, from the material characteristics of the presentation. Digital technologies lead to specific learning practices using digital resources to participate in the materiality of learning. The debate lies in the difference between learning in the physical versus the digital environment and the interaction between physical and digital matter. But how do physicality and materiality affect our interactions in a space? With the introduction of the internet, physical location has become mostly irrelevant. There is no distinction in persons' digital interaction, whether they are in the same room, same country, or anywhere in the world. In creating digital spaces, we lose physicality and materiality. Many students relied on the university campus in the South African context as the only place where they have a desk large enough to work with the larger size pages commonly used for interior design presentation. In some cases, this could also be the only place that they have a desk for their exclusive use, unlike sharing a dining or kitchen table at home. In many cases, it is also the only practice where students have access to an uninterrupted internet connection. This talks about the learning environment. With regards to matter, learning is a transformative process where communication, whether through language, gesture, and visual communication, expresses meaning. Importing line, shape, form, texture, and color in descriptive text or visual means become the means of expressing materiality in online communication. Materiality is essential to generating and communicating ideas as it provides an informal and supportive way to develop the ideas further. Interior Design 3 students are required to explore materials regarding their physical properties since interior environments rely significantly on the tactile properties of the surfaces that the inhabitants of space will interact with. It is almost paradoxically more important at a time when more people spend time indoors during the pandemic. The nature of the study suggests a qualitative study in an attempt to explore interesting phenomena. The research is conducted within a defined setting with a distinctive dynamic. Therefore, we choose to investigate the phenomena using critical reflection as a method of inquiry within a single case study. The study focuses on the experiences of students at the Interior Design Department at the University of Johannesburg. The data describes feelings, attitudes, views, and understandings of the challenges of teaching and learning during the national COVID-19 lockdown. Since the data reflect views that are personal and socially constructed, the study is considered from an interpretive paradigm. The sample comprises 11 students. The sample size is structured on a purposive basis that ensures that participants engaged with the Interior Design 3 module facilitated at the Interior Design Department of the University of Johannesburg in 2020. The sample selection of 11 students contribute to 50% of the students registered for the module. Interior design academics engaged in teaching strategies in the physical and online studio and adapted them accordingly using lesser technologies to meet the Interior Design 3 module's learning outcomes. Through critical reflection of these experiences, these academics identified two themes that emerged as key components in both the physical and online design studio. We employ semi-structured interviewing as the data collection method for the study. This involves describing the predetermined themes to the respondents. These are captured in a prepared questioning agenda to use as guidance while allowing the interview to be flexible. In this study, the interviews seek to understand how teaching strategies were employed to meet the Interior Design 3 module learning outcomes. Consent and ethical clearance is requested of all interviewees. Interviews are conducted online using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Blackboard Collaborate, as is most easily accessible to the respondents. Two themes were identified to guide the semi-structured interview questions and written reflections. The first related to dynamic interaction between the students and the lecturers. Typical questions include: how did interaction change between students and lecturers during the national COVID-19 lockdown? In what way did the new way of interaction benefit teaching and learning? What disadvantages were evident in the new way of interaction? The second theme that guides the interview questions relates to contact with materiality. These questions include: how did lack of access to products, materials, and finishes change the way students process information for the design solution? In what way did the lack of access to products, materials, and furnishes affect the presentation of design solutions? And did the lack of access to products limit students' ability to understand the intangible value of materiality? It is important to remember that the focus of the interviews were not to evaluate these methods' success, but rather to describe the adapted design teaching strategies that were employed to meet the Interior Design 3 module learning outcome. We hope to further present reflections on how the innovative and successful adaptations to the curricula can be implemented in the Interior Design 3 module to create a more integrated and improved blended learning module that enhances dynamic interaction and contact with materiality in the post-COVID-19 context. We have to reconsider how materiality is linked with the intangible digital and physical material processes. The physical and digital worlds are not separate facets of the same world, but intertwined in a new reality. We believe that the findings will contribute to interior design education strategies for developing or modifying curricula that preserve dynamic interaction and contact with materiality in the online interior design studio in a time of change. The following two slides provides references to the work cited in our abstract, this presentation, and our upcoming paper. Thank you. We look forward to your feedback and input and the remaining presentations. We hope you enjoy the conference and would like to say thank you to the organizers for this opportunity.